Okay,
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
Are you all set?
I am.
Good evening, my name is Andrew Proctor. I'm the Executive Director of Literary Arts. I'm here with Sebastian Junger, who will be speaking at the Schnitzer Concert Hall tonight at 7:30 p.m. And we just had a pretty moving experience down at the University of Oregon at the Turnbull Center, where we got to meet, where Sebastian got to meet some local journalists and some local vets. And I now have some questions that were asked over the Facebook page for those of the folks who are not going to be able to be in the concert hall tonight. And the first question comes from Joseph, Oregon, and the question is about, based on your description in war of the tight-knit brotherhood of frontline combat troops, and the tendency in times for that boredom for them to engage in these instances of sort of sexual fantasy, and it kind of gets a little hairy, especially when they've been up there for like a year. How do you feel about, or what do you think about the restrictions on women participating in direct combat being kind of removed, and that being sort of, that group kind of being mixed together now, essentially?
I think on the large bases, there is sexual harassment, there are incidents, terrible incidents of rape, because the big bases are anonymous enough that that kind of thing can happen. At a base like Restrepo, it's 20 people. I mean, it's a big family. And if there were women up there, I think there would be issues if there were women up there. But if there were women up there, I think it's absolutely inconceivable that there would be, I mean, they might be having sex up there, but I think any kind of rape would, it's just inconceivable. I mean, the soldiers in that situation need each other too much, right, to violate each other in that way. I think the real issue would be on the larger bases.
Right, okay, great. This question is sort of about, I guess, this is a more writerly question, and it's about Tim O'Brien and the work that he did writing about the Vietnam War, which was, fictionalized, both his accounts and the accounts of others. And you're obviously taking a track to be strictly factual. Can you sort of talk about whether that was influential to you, Tim O'Brien, as a writer, and what you think about when you think about writing fact about war as opposed to fiction about war? I mean, I know you haven't written any fiction about war, but you certainly probably read a lot of it.
I think writing fiction is a tremendous enterprise, and it looks too hard for me to attempt, but I mean, Karl Marlantes, another great fiction writer who took his experiences in Vietnam and turned them into an incredible novel named Matterhorn. Tim O'Brien, likewise, amazing writer, and I'm sure he could have written a great nonfiction book, a great memoir if he wanted to, and he chose to write fiction, and I think that's fantastic. It's just different ways of reaching the truth about something. For me, I'm a journalist, and I try to write in as compelling a way as possible, but strictly factually. There's sort of room for both. Right,
and I've noticed in war, you sort of resist, for the most part, a lot of dramatization, a lot of hard double quotes. I mean, I know you talk about that at the beginning of the book on the author's note. Was that extremely deliberate then?
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's the quote. Using quotes is complicated. If someone says something into a tape recorder or into a camera that you can verify, you can use double quotes. That means it was said, you can confirm it. If someone's remembering some dialogue that they had yesterday or last year, you can't put that in double quotes because you can't prove that those words were said. It's just someone's memory. And so in that case, I have it in dialogue form, but it's not in quotes. The quote for me is absolutely sacred. It's something someone said, and you can prove it, and that's it. And so for me, that's a very important distinction. But just as a matter of sort of writing style, I tend towards, just non-melodramatic kind of somewhat flat style. I mean, sort of declarative sentences and understatement. I mean, that's sort of more of my style.
Right. And what about? I mean, this sort of leads to a question about do you think that does the recent all this with scandals around memoir worry you? Do you care about that? I mean, it's different than reportage, obviously. Yeah. So I wonder, do you feel that's a problem for your line of work? Do you think it influences it? I mean, how do you respond to some of that stuff?
I mean, I think the scandals around memoir, I think they sort of stem from people who weren't journalists writing something unaware of the rules of journalism, writing something that's purportedly true. And I think the publishing industry has sort of encourage them to okay, well, why don't you just puff this up a bit, and I mean, editors know exactly what nonfiction is, and sometimes they encourage memoirists I think they've stopped, but I think for a while they were encouraging memoirists to sort of just massage the facts a little bit, and but journalists very few journalists would even cross their mind to do that, and certainly for me. So I think those problems come from people who really weren't journalists and they don't know what the rules are. But yeah, it caused a huge problem because now people doubt everything, and that's too bad.
Right.